With an 86-year existence and countless mergers and acquisitions that swelled their ranks, DC Comics has a lot of superheroes in their roster, so many that it's literally impossible to know every single hero that exists because there's just so many of them. However, that doesn't mean that they all get their due. In fact, a lot of them are pushed aside in favor of having 6 Batman books. And it's not a coincidence that I got thinking about lesser-known DC heroes right after the Stargirl show premiered, because that show is giving a platform for some lesser-known heroes that haven't really gotten their fair shake in mainstream pop culture, like Yolanda Montez as Wildcat, or Beth Chapel as Dr. Midnite. Also, Jakeem Thunder has been teased, and that makes me immeasurably happy. But it got me thinking about the other characters in the JSA that were on the team during Stargirl's time that nobody ever talks about. Actually, it started out as an underrated superheroes video, but then I realized that they were all DC, so then it was underrated DC heroes, and then I realized yet again that the list was comprised solely of JSA characters, so there you go. As always, this is my opinion, and on my channel, my opinion is law. But you're free to your own, and you probably have your own. So, without further ado, these are my top 5 underrated members of the Justice Society of America. Honorable mentions: Beth Chapel as Dr. Midnite and Yolanda Montez as Wildcat. Full disclosure, technically they're not actually members of the JSA. They were members of Infinity Inc., the team formed with the children and protégés of the JSA, introduced in the lead-up to Crisis on Infinite Earths, but pretty much every other original member of that team was also a member of the JSA at some point, either before or after the formation of Infinity Inc. Truthfully, I'm only bringing them up because they're currently in the public eye thanks to their inclusion on Stargirl, which is awesome. I didn't know much about them before the show started. The most I knew about Yolanda was her few bits in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and the storyline that her cousin got in Jeff Johns' JSA book, where he joined the JSA specifically to get revenge on Eclipso for killing her. In a slightly interesting twist, Eclipso also killed Beth Chapel, and they, for some inexplicable reason, stayed dead. And I think that's a little unfair, given how many events have given DC the chance to hit the reset button and resurrect people like Maxwell Lord and Osiris, but they never bothered to bring back Yolanda and Beth. And they're very interesting characters. Go check out Infinity Inc. for more about their backstories, and I think they deserved better. With that said, let's get to the list proper. Number 5, Rick Tyler Hourman and Jesse Chambers Liberty Belle. So, superhero comics are weird when it comes to relationships. You have Marvel, where apparently Spider-Man being married makes the character boring, but I think DC has proven that theory to be patently false. I mean, Superman and Lois Lane, Jay and Joan Garrick, Barry and Iris, Wally and Linda. There are a lot of long-standing relationships that have stood the test of time, and despite some hiccups along the way, they do almost always end up together, despite DC sometimes keeping them apart for stupid reasons. Except Jay Garrick, they don't really mess with him outside the New 52. My point is that the older ones get married off, but I very seldom see it with the younger guard, at least in the books that I read, which is very few. Especially with the sliding timescale, so a lot of the younger heroes very often don't get to become marrying age in the first place. Not true for the Rick Tyler Hourman and Jesse Chambers Liberty Belle. For backstory, at this point Jessie Quick had lost her speed and had instead took up her mother's mantle. Their relationship was very interesting, and their backup feature in JSA All-Stars as they globe-trotted fighting against Icicle and Tigress was a neat storyline. Heck, they were split into 2 different books. They put Jessie Quick on one JSA team and Rick Tyler on the other one, and they still acknowledge their relationship when they had crossovers or even within the books themselves. Especially given how crappy Jessie Quick was treated in the early 2000s, especially in Jay Farber's Titans book with that whole affair with her mother's fiancé debacle. It was nice to see her back at full intelligence and in a healthy relationship. And much like most of the people on this list, we sadly lost them to the dreaded New 52. Now that DC is moving away, will they return? I sure hope so, because they were a great match. Number 4, Maxine Hunkel, Cyclone. The 1999 JSA series brought a lot of new blood into the team. Stargirl, a new Wildcat, and Ted Grant's son Tom, but one of the most interesting new additions was the granddaughter of one of the quote-unquote founding members of the team, Red Tornado. No, not that one. The Ma Hunkel Red Tornado was a parody character that got a one-page cameo in the first issue of All-Star Comics that the JSA appeared in. That, to its credit, got a hilarious callback during one of the JLA JSA Crisis crossovers in the 70s. Now, I would go so far as to say that Ma Hunkel herself is an underrated member of the JSA, as she later faded into obscurity, and for good reason, as it was later revealed in the pages of JSA that she was in witness protection, having testified against a gang in the 50s and hid to escape retaliation. She was told by the other members that she can resume her old life, and she chooses to become the caretaker of the JSA Brownstone and mentor to the younger kids, including her granddaughter Maxine, whose origin actually goes back to, and this should be no surprise to anyone who knows my favorite comic, a character created for Kingdom Come, and Alex Ross reused the design when he was creating Maxine. She's basically if Sylvia Tilly from Star Trek Discovery was a superhero, and her costume is based on the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz. She even has a monkey sidekick. Honestly, she's awesome, and I think I love her so much because she is the antithesis of Superboy Prime. She's a stand-in for a DC fan, but a good one. She's a fangirl of all the heroes and acts like many comics readers probably would in the midst of all those larger-than-life figures. She brings an enthusiasm that I think is missing from a lot of superhero media nowadays. A lot of heroes are all serious and dour, even the fun ones, but Maxine is just utterly happy to be a part of something bigger. And while she appeared in a cameo in Doomsday Clock, I'd like to see her return to prominence, along with the rest of the classic JSA, and maybe get some appearances in spin-off media. I hear she might be showing up in the Black Adam movie, though I can't figure out why, given that her and the other JSAers that have been announced only had a connection to Black Adam because they were all part of the JSA together, and there's no cinematic JSA at this point. Hey, maybe we could even see her in Season 2 of Stargirl. Hey, I can dream, can't I? Number 3, King Chimera. King Chimera is the son of Golden Age hero The King, and other than that, his backstory was a complete mystery, because the JSA books that he was a part of got so sidetracked with events and crossover storylines, and they barely touched upon it, and then the book was eventually ended in the wake of the New 52. So we'll never find out what his deal is. He had a dead girlfriend that apparently appeared as a guilt spirit, and he didn't get along with Kid Carnival, but other than that, I was curious to find out his backstory, given he had crazy powers, but that wasn't to be, unfortunately. And it is a shame, too, because he was one of the few younger characters in the JSA that were closer in age to Stargirl and Jakeem Thunder that were an adult children of the classic JSAers, and I felt that that was an interesting dynamic to have. Even he and Cyclone seemed to have a thing going, and I was curious to see where that would go as well. Really, the reason I think he's so underrated is because there's so much mystery to the character, and I just really want to know what his deal is. I'm just genuinely curious. Number 2, Sandy Hawkins, Sand and Sandy the Golden Boy. The story of Sand is a pretty sad one. He was one of those kid sidekicks that they had during the Golden Age, a la Robin or Speedy, but for Wesley Dodds. He eventually stopped appearing, and the reason for his departure was eventually revealed as a lab experiment gone wrong that turned the boy into a sand monster in a crisis that took the JLA and JSA teaming up to stop. He was restored to normal and had the added bonus of power to manipulate Earth and turn himself into sand at will, but he didn't really do all that much until he became chairman of the Justice Society when they reformed in 1999 following Wesley Dodds' death. And he was great at it, but with the shifting creative teams and the constant events that happened that I felt made it so the stories were never able to be fully cohesive, he eventually passed that role over to Mr. Terrific and only appeared occasionally toward the end of that book's run, having inherited prophetic dreams from the original Sandman. That's the Wesley Dodds one and not the Neil Gaiman one. Comics are weird. And with the New 52, his only appearance has been in a cameo in an issue of Forager that took place during World War II, so it predates his powers. And it's a shame, because he's like the heaviest hitter that the JSA ever had in their ranks. He's basically an earthbender. Imagine if Toph could not only do all the stuff she can do, but turn into sand and travel anywhere on Earth instantaneously. Mr. Sandman, bring me my dream, which is to see Sand fighting baddies again. Number 1, Hector Hall, Silver Scarab, and Dr. Fate. This one is the reason that I made this video in the first place. So I know a lot of you guys probably think you know why I care so much about Hector Hall, given the name of this channel, but in truth, I was first introduced to the character not as the Silver Scarab, but as Dr. Fate. See, in the 1999 JSA ongoing, Hector Hall was returned to life and took on the helmet of Naboo and mantle of Dr. Fate, which I thought was really cool, especially given how Dr. Fate is tied into the Hawks' backstory, so it makes perfect sense. Hector is actually the son of Carter and Chimera Hall, Hawkman and Hawkwoman, and originally started on Earth 2 before the Crisis shifted everything to New Earth. He was one of the founders of Infinity Inc., but unfortunately, he was one of those heroes that got taken over by an evil force, went crazy, and died. He got better, though, and that's where the JSA and Dr. Fate's helmet met up with him. Unfortunately, Hector sorta got the shaft. Mordru and Naboo kept screwing with him. He had a hard time trying to locate his wife, Lita Trevor Hall, aka Fury, originally daughter of Earth 2 Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor. And when he finally did find her, it was right before the Spectre went crazy and tried to eliminate all magic in the world right before Infinite Crisis, and Hector and Lita nearly died in a frozen wasteland before their son Daniel, the Sandman, the one from the Neil Gaiman Sandman comic, and not Wesley Dodds, comics are weird, which is somehow in continuity with the mainstream DCU, rescued them. But neither of them have been seen since, and I think it is a big shame. Though the role of Fury has been taken over by the New 52 Earth 2 version of Donna Troy. You know, come to think of it, Fury is pretty underrated too. Let's do this over again. Roll the number. Number 1, Hector Hall, Silver Scarab, Dr. Fate, and Lita Trevor Fury. This one's a tie, because their stories are pretty intrinsically linked. Lita similarly sorta got the shaft. For one, she lost part of her iconicness after Crisis on Infinite Earths, because after they redid 1D's origin and got rid of Earth 2, she was the daughter of a retconned-in Golden Age Fury and a random Admiral Trevor. Hector died, that whole Neil Gaiman Sandman thing, it was crazy. And it's a shame that her and Hector never truly got to join the JSA fully, especially given that it was their goal when they formed Infinity Inc. in the first place. She was only really a plot device when she was brought back into the JSA for Hector's story, and when she was finally alive and happy again, her and Hector got killed off by the Spectre. And I thought this before I knew all of their backstories. I had only recently begun reading Infinity Inc. I'm not even done with the series yet. All I knew about them when I read through the JSA series was that Hector had been a hero and Lita was his wife, and I still felt that they were underrated. JSA really did Hector and Lita dirty, as the kids say. But yeah, in my opinion, they are, by far, the most underrated members of the Justice Society of America. And those were my top 5 underrated members of the Justice Society of America. If there's one thing I want out of this new Stargirl show, it's for characters like Hector and Lita and Maxine and Sandy and King Chimera and Rick Tyler and Jesse Quick to get a new life and prominence so that they'll be folded back into the comics proper. And hey, we do have Rick Tyler in the show, although I'm not sure if they're actually going to bring in the Liberty Belle stuff. And hey, maybe the post-Doomsday Clock DCU will give us some of that, or maybe that new 5G thing that everyone's been buzzing about. But regardless, I think the spotlight should be given to these lesser-known and oft-mistreated characters. Come on, DC. Don't be cowards. Bring back Hector Hall, damn it. I want all Beetle-related characters back. Actually, in fact, bring back Red Beetle, too. What the hell was her deal, anyway? But that's a story for another list. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on the channel. And if you'd like, you can also find my videos on any of these fine websites. And if you want to help out the channel, you can support us on Patreon. See you next time.